Thank you for auditing Professor Sky's Record Review, the always positive new music review show hosted by a French professor who has a little tiny dog in his front pocket. It's a thematic dog that is going to be tied into the album I'm reviewing, Smiling with No Teeth by Genesis Owusu. Now, I wasn't going to review this. My first listen, for some reason, it didn't really grab me, but thankfully more than one auditor really suggested that I give it a chance, and I did, and I'm very happy because I've spent the last couple days really plunging into this very deep and very rewarding album. I've been trying to think about how am I going to approach it. I was sort of thinking about putting it in the context of what I think we can call the post-Butterfly era of hip-hop, which is to say, after To Pimp a Butterfly by Kendrick Lamar, arguably the standards for what makes a good alternative, mainstream hip-hop album has been raised, especially in terms of using real musicians, integrating personal themes, social themes, being smart without ever being nerdy, being vulnerable without ever being soft. All these things that Kendrick Lamar is able to do, it appears as though there are some other artists who have been trying to do the same thing, and some of them succeed, such as Genesis Owusu in this album. But I'm not going to stay there. I'm going to kind of let that point go away. You can comment on it if you think it's interesting or wrong or whatever. I'm going to return to this thing in my pocket, which I'm going to take out because it's a little bit annoying. This is a black dog. It's from my daughter's stuffed animal collection. And that is what I think the album should have been called. It's called Smiling with No Teeth, but it is basically a theme album. It's pretty much as close as rap gets to a concept album. It is the concept of the two black dogs, which are explicitly referenced but never fully explained. I think it is in trying to understand the nature of these dogs that we get to the nature of the album itself. The fact that there are two dogs is important. This album is very consciously divided. Almost every song is paired with another song either before it or after it. There's all these little dyads all the way throughout the album, and it's all around the themes of these dogs. Now, I have read a couple interviews where he talked about these dogs, and I'll mention what he actually says, because he knows better than I do. But thematically, I think it's important to see it as basically an external dog and an internal dog. Essentially one person, but just sort of seeing one person as a black dog, the black dog being a figure seen from the outside and from the inside. Seen from the outside, I think the black dog is a reference for how many people of African descent, who for the purposes of brevity I will refer to as black people for this channel, how many black people feel dehumanized by society, the ways that they're seen, the trauma of knowing that you are seen differently, the trauma of being treated differently. And there's a certain kind of pain, which obviously I can theorize, but I can't feel. So I'm not speaking from experience, but I'm speaking from empathy at least. The sort of trauma that comes, the added trauma that comes with better understanding of society. The sort of pain that comes, there's always a pain that comes with intelligence, right? The smarter you are, the more you are aware of bad things in addition to good things. And I think there's a sort of deep awareness and a deeper understanding of the mechanisms of racism at play here. I think this is a very specific area of study I think we could make as a sort of, not of African Americans, but just of transnational blackness, works which are in this zone of extremely intelligently phrased expressions of pain and trauma at being seen as less than, at being dehumanized for your blackness. And the misery that comes with the intelligence of seeing all of these invisible mechanisms that exist. It's different than just suffering. Understanding on a deeper level why you're suffering is a special kind of misery. So this makes me think of To Pimp a Butterfly, Kendrick Lamar's work. This reminds me a lot of Dave, the British rapper who I reviewed last year. And it reminds me of the comedy of Dave Chappelle as well. This sort of miserable wisdom that comes. So that's the external black dog, which I think is the political side of this album, which is nice that it's not the only side. There's also the internal black dog, the metaphorical black dog of depression. The black dog is not always depression. I would say it's more a bad side of this person, of Genesis Owusu. An internal part of him that is sort of savage and uncontrollable. Perhaps the part of him that is internalized the way he is seen by the outside and actually behaves in the way that he is expected to behave by the racists on the outside. that might be going too far. But here we have this debate between the two different black dogs that are part of the same person. So what are these dogs and how do they play out in the music? We'll get to that soon. It's worth mentioning that this is a very interesting album internationally because the artist is from the capital of Australia. My son is really into geography, so I'm just going to sit here and let you pretend like you know the capital of Australia. That's right. Of course, we're talking about Canberra, not Sydney, not Melbourne, not even Perth or Brisbane. I don't know how you pronounce that, but Canberra. So that's interesting. Whoa, Toby, it's not that interesting. So it's from Canberra, but he also has his origins in Ghana. So in a way, I'm going back to Ghana. I reviewed an album last month by a group from Ghana. I reviewed some Ghana hip-hop a couple months ago. It's interesting having this kind of, again, this question of transnational blackness, the sort of, which again, I would say links pretty well, especially to the work of Dave and other artists, particularly in Britain, which are trying to sort of create this sense, for lack of a better word, of negritude, going back to the work of Aimé Césaire, really trying to develop an international understanding of the mechanisms of racism, and I think artists like this help to advance that quite far. Musically, this album is very rich. It's sort of an EDM, electronic dance music album. You're not going to bark for that, Toby? No? Okay. It's kind of a punk album. It's kind of a soul album. And it's kind of a hip-hop album. You'll see the cover. It's a guy with gold teeth and gold rings wearing a bunch of bandages. And so you'd immediately think that it's going to be some kind of just hip-hop album, maybe trap album, but it's not. It is an exhaustively well-produced album filled with virtuoso musicians. It really is. It never quite stays in one genre, but it never feels forced genre to genre. This feels very much not like a rap album with rap guy and producer. This feels like a lead singer and a band. That's how it feels. And if you read the songwriting credits, I think that bears out. For the most part, this is just great music, jumping around, not always rap, sometimes rap, kind of rap, but just due to our internal prejudices, we see a young black person making music where sometimes they speak in verse, and all of a sudden we just go, oh, that's just hip hop. I think this album deserves to be in more than one category in the record store of life. It's also in that way, I would say, a good entry into what I call the rap but category. Or people say, I don't like rap, but I like this. If you are like that, or if you know someone like that whose taste in rap is maybe a little bit limited by their expectations of musicianship, or virtuosity in musicianship, this is a good album. Because all the way throughout, it seems to be the entire album is entirely played by this band with Genesis at the front. So, can I tell you the truth? Do you know why I didn't review this album? I didn't like the bandages. The bandages on the cover reminded me of The Weeknd. Every time I think of The Weeknd, I get bummed out because I think about people getting hooked on cocaine. So that was my bad reason. That's one of the reasons I like this channel, is telling you reasons why I almost didn't review something that are just ridiculous. That's the reason. So I have homework for you. As I always do, I like to give you a song as an example of the album. You can listen to it and then come back and finish the album if you haven't heard it yet. I'm actually going to give you 2 songs because the album is that rich and that varied. I want to pick 2 songs right from the dead center of the album, the end of side 1 and the end of side 2. I'm talking about ostensibly a hip-hop album, and it is an album with a capital A. It has a concept, it has a flow, it has a very intentional track listing. It is not a compilation of singles and B-sides and some song that was released on Instagram and one that was released on SoundCloud and one that was used in a commercial for some underpants. No, it's very much an album. So I'm taking 2 songs right from the dead center. First one is the title track, Smiling with No Teeth. I can't really do that too well. I don't look like I'm smiling. I look like a weirdo. Okay. This is a good example of the sort of more like soulful side of this record. It starts with a woo and like a smoky organ sound, and a beautiful chorus leads off, sung in a very high voice, perhaps even falsetto. Everybody wants the sweetness without touching the bland. Everybody wants the help, but they ain't leading a hand. With this cool sound in the background going wop wop. And it builds up nicely. The second chorus has these added voices, and the drums get a lot more full. I imagine that seeing this band in concert is great. I'm just going to call them a band. I'm just going to call Genesis Owusu a band. And I bet seeing them is great. The post-chorus, these guitar notes kind of start coming in and getting all squeezy and weird. And then by the last chorus, there's a whole host of voices. The drums are doing more, and it feels kind of like a party. Quite often on this album, it has that kind of Marvin Gaye sad party feeling of a whole bunch of people in the studio singing about kind of sad things. Again, a very cohesive album with a very conscious group of collaborators who collaborate consistently throughout the entire thing. And the whole thing is tied into a lot of the themes of the first half of the album, which are about his mental state, very much about the internal black dog. That's what the first half is mostly about, right? The part of him that is wild, that is sad, that is fake smiling. That's what it means to smile with closed teeth, with no teeth. To have a fake smile. Slathering honey on our demons for the palate of the apathetic. Slathering honey on our demons. That's a great way to describe what a lot of musicians have to do. In order to express themselves, express their lives, they have to slather honey on their demons. You can even hear his accent on here, which I guess is a little bit of a Canberra accent. I don't know. I wonder what it'd be like to hear him actually talking. And why have I reviewed so many Australian bands in the last month? Like Nick Cave and King Gizzard and now Genesis. The post-chorus becomes just straight spoken word. The album goes between rapping, singing, and spoken word. There's a lot, I would say there's even more spoken word in general, but he does it in a way where it's not too affected. It's really quite nice. So many great lyrics, like too many nets in fishless lakes. Okay, that's his state. That's the state of this kind of sad black dog who's in this stuck position. So that's the end of the first half. The second part of your homework, what I'll put up here, is the next track, I Don't See Color. This is where we're headed to the other side of black dogs. The racism against people with black skin or dark skin. The racism in the song, I Don't See Color, with a U, so you know it's from the British Empire. I don't see color. What's great is this expression itself, I don't see color, is still to this day. I'm recording this in 2021. If you're coming back from the future, let me tell you something. It is still an expression used by people. And they say it and they don't lose their job and they don't get shamed. There are people who legitimately say, even on television, I don't see color. And they get away with it. I can't tell you. I can tell you that future generations will watch this video and go, that can't be. It's true. To say I don't see color is to say I don't acknowledge oppression. I don't acknowledge how I oppress you. I don't acknowledge how you have to live with otherness. I don't acknowledge anything except for my own privilege, which I cannot acknowledge, so I don't see color. So already just the title shows on the second half of the album, it's going to go off in a whole nother area. Musically, very interesting, almost like a Laurie Anderson avant-garde style voices. Bop, bop, with nice tom-toms, like drums being played on a tom-tom. Actually sounds like African rhythms, which builds up over the song, and these blaring synths start to fall apart at the end. And the whole thing is just, what are you going to do when the trigger's on you? This feeling of feeling hunted, of feeling unloved, of feeling like a black dog being chased by society. It is hard to move different when your face is our face. He is able to do a thing which good lyricists and good poets are able to do, which is be complicated, have a line that's kind of complicated and obscure, slathering honey on our demons, and then also just be straightforward. It's hard to move different when your face is our face. When you see the black man, it's riots and terror, but when I talk about slavery, you weren't there, how convenient. There is a correlation between I don't see color and the rejection of slavery. And fundamentally, it all comes down to this one question. And this is, I don't mean to be on a soapbox here, but I can't help it. This album makes me think about these themes. If you ever are arguing with somebody who's trying to tell you that systematic racism doesn't exist, just ask them this question. When does history start? At what point does history begin? Once you can agree when history begins, you can have an argument. If you force people to tell you their frame, they will most likely not continue that argument. So this whole consciously midpoint is great. And you can stop this review now. I'm going to go over the rest of the album. But if you want to stop the review now, I won't take any offense to it. Subscribe and check out my Patreon. I put on a good video today about St. Patrick's Day. You can do that or not. Because these songs exemplify both sides of this album so well. Both of the different black dogs, how they exist, how they cause him pain, and how he uses music to work through that pain. So let's get through the rest of the album though. It's really good. The opening track is called On the Move, one of the strongest openings to a hip-hop album I've ever heard. It almost sounds like Daft Punk, with like some filtered synth lines, and just like Black Dogs on the Move, just keep saying this over and over again. His voice even reminds me a little bit of Flava Flav, almost like Fly Like an Eagle synthesizers. He says in one of the interviews I read, that's on Genius, that he'd been categorized as a funk guy. So he wanted to make albums that would like shatter the perception of what it is that he does. So I haven't listened to his earlier stuff. So if you have, please tell me in the comments, how is this different? Toby, do you see a black dog outside? It's okay. You don't need to bark at it. He's a dog on the move. And just some of the great lyricism here too. Dogs on the move, black, feel the fur on the bruise. Just that concept, right? The fur on the bruise, very evocative. Like you feel the sadness and the awareness of the sadness in this album all the way throughout. The next track is called The Other Black Dog. Another kind of synth rap track. Begins off with a kind of a ululation. Again, almost a spoken word instead of a rap flow. The first album is mostly rap flow. This is mostly spoken word. This talks about this second dog, the fake smiling, being wild and happy. Something about this other dog, this fake dog, this kind of animalistic thing inside of him is that it always projects a happiness or a smile that isn't there. A lot of this album is an analysis of what is a real smile, and there aren't many. Very kind of relentless style to the rapping. Almost even like Outkast, I would say. Just like very fast delivered. I think that's intentional to give you a sense of claustrophobia, that everything's coming on top of you. He's able to change his meter throughout the album very well to match the theme of the song and the way the musicians are playing. Some great lyrics here. I fight myself to pass the time. So very clearly these first two tracks are intentionally paired. We have on Black Dogs on the Move, and then The Other Black Dog. We have them as they're all kind of paired up nicely together. The next two tracks are also paired, but I don't like them. I'm sorry, Genesis Owusu fans. I just don't like them. They're about women. Okay, the first one's called Centerfold, kind of a weird P-Funk style singing at the beginning. A cool usage of backwards singing. You don't hear a lot of backwards masking on French, on hip-hop music. According to his notes, this is a black dog love song. And it's all like, I'll sink my teeth into your skull. I don't love it. And the next track is Waiting for You. And when I was listening to it, I was like, okay, it's got this kind of cool bass work, kind of R&B, basically a sexy soul song, hardly hip hop at all. And I thought, this is just like the last song. And then I read in Genius that he considers this a sister song, just a little bit less menacing. Toby has been contributing to today's episode with his barks. I will tell you, I was listening to Waiting for You, and there's this kind of like detuned keyboard solo, which is really quite nice. I guess I don't hate it, but these are my least favorite songs. And we were taking him to the vet because he hurt his leg, unfortunately. He jumps too much. And we were taking him to the vet, and he was whining because he was scared. And the way he was whining was in perfect pitch, perfect harmony with the detuned piano solo. There you go. Then we get to the next song, Don't Need You, which is right back, another high point of the album. It's an uplifting anthem for defeating your demons. Take that, the bad black dog. Like your black dogs, you don't need them anymore. It's talking about depression, not needing it. And it's this cool chorus where like every word goes along with this like staccato guitar line. Wait, could this be true? I don't need you. I don't need you. Boom, boop, 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 boop. And there's so much of this album that's kind of a party. It's kind of a fun party. Like sometimes it's sad, but I think you could play this, like this song as a great example, and just be like, wait, I don't need you. You know, like just kind of like, I shouldn't dance on this channel, but you know, like it makes you happy. Even though what is said is being weird, I will tell you, this makes me think mostly of Biz Markie. And I'd be surprised if this wasn't an intentional reference. Biz Markie, the way he's able to sing with such joy and abandon, particularly the way the words ah on here reminds me so much of Biz Markie and the way he sings. I mean that as a compliment. I think Biz Markie is a great artist when he sings. Well, always, but especially when he sings. So I think they have a little bit of that kind of like fun style. And another more contemporary comparison I would say is Dram. You know, just that ability to kind of flow between singing and rapping and not get too hung up on which thing are you. Next track is called Drown. And this is like an 80s like new wave song. It sounds like kind of Prince-ish. This is sung by one of the producers of the whole album, part of that band, Kieran J. Colling. These pulsing synthesizers, dun, dun. Like it's music that like you could do aerobics to. Ding 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 ding. Has this whole thing going, and it's rocking and it's pulsing. But what's cool is that it's totally connected to the previous song. All these pairs, every song has been paired so far. We're on the 6th song and it's already paired. And this really goes to a good argument as to why this could be considered a party album. He even says the words "I would die for you" at some point, and it's very similar sonically to "I would die for you." I realized that I am not going to say that this reminds me of good post-punk music. Do you know why? Racism. That's why. The only thing that would keep me from saying this is a great post-punk song, it does all the things that a good post-punk song does. It's kind of interestingly like led, it's using elements of punk but developing them further, and a lot of the thematics of it. It would be a perfectly fine post-punk song, but because lead singer is not white, I did not associate it with post-punk. So I'm correcting myself right now and telling you this is a great party post-punk song that fits in very well with this theme of kind of persevering against one's demons or against one's dogs. Next track is called Goldchains, which is again about this internal struggle, the stress of blowing up and of having to be a celebrity, and how relentless your life is when you are almost famous. You have to be constantly Instagramming, constantly Twitter, constantly interviewing, constantly releasing. I'd never heard of Genesis Owusu. I'm sure he's big in some circles, but in order for me to hear of him, in order for my kids to hear of him, he has to be working all the time, just relentlessly. And the flow of this song matches that actual relentlessness. And he has to hide. You see, the truth is, I'm often blue. So many cracks in the ceiling, I try to mend them with glue. A beautiful chorus, slightly off, all about gold chains being cold, which is really quite nice. All the way throughout this album, you should pay attention to the chorus work. Really the songwriting, though. I mean, I'm telling you, I'm pretty sure this is just a band that just knows that it'll be more successful if it presents itself as a rap act, but it really feels like a band. Like, what if Kendrick Lamar's band, his backup band on To Pimp a Butterfly, was just his band, and that they just work together always? Wouldn't that be great? Other than we wouldn't have gotten Damn, and Damn is really good. But still, they kind of jam out at the end and it's nice. Then we have the end of the first half, Smiling with No Teeth, the beginning of the next half, I Don't See Color, and then Black Dogs, which is basically just a clean punk song. And here I'm going to go on a little bit of a rant here. I don't know why I'm talking so much about race, but I think it's important. So he says here that he looks like Will Smith from afar. Someone's saying that to him. And I want to take a second to acknowledge the role of Will Smith in international blackness and acceptance of people with darker skin as celebrities. You know, there's the thing where he's the only celebrity who can open a movie like in China, right? That there's a big resistance to American stars if they are black, just for whatever reason you want to say. In most of the world, Will Smith is sort of the only one who manages to go through all those lines. And I don't think we should go, well, that's good for him. I think we should just say, isn't that miserable that that's the case? And moreover, there's a story that I want to tell that I think ties in and helped me when I was 20 years old to understand the pain that it must be to not understand. Helped me to empathize. See, I went to a hunting lodge with a bunch of Frenchmen. Okay, I was in France. A friend of mine knew these French guys, and they went. I didn't know them, but I wanted to go to this place in France, Dardenne. It's a nice place, beautiful like marshes. It was a cool place to go. And I go to this hunting lodge. I don't hunt, so I'm just going on hikes and enjoying nature and whatever, eating cheese, doing whatever you do in France. And then they come back from hunting, and we're all sitting around in a room and we're talking. And these guys, they seem a little bit snooty, but it's okay. You know, we're talking. And I speak French, but my friends didn't really learn, so they were speaking English. And then we start talking about Will Smith. And then we all just start talking about how much we love Will Smith, you know, the Fresh Prince and all of his movies and how great he is. And I remember thinking, isn't it great that like an African American can have such a large exposure to the world, even to these weird upper crust elites from France? And then at a certain point, this one guy just gets up and says, yes, and I am going to replace the letter N with the letter B. I think you can see where this is going because I don't want to use a word on my channel. Okay. But I do have to say it a little bit so you can hear the accent. I'm sitting on the couch and I'm sitting there talking, and we're talking about Will Smith, and the guy goes, yes, but actually, isn't he just a tall beager? And I sat there, and I left. And I didn't leave my room for the rest of the weekend. I didn't talk to them. I must have eaten their food, like 1 or 2 bites. I wouldn't talk to them. I told them it was outrageous, that that's racist, and I won't stand for it. But here it is, this person who is accepted, who's able to be a billionaire, but fundamentally, how do the people in power see him? Just a very tall beager. Okay, I mean, that's how he pronounced it. That's why I'm saying it, okay? I don't mean to be offensive, but that's how it was said. So I know this is a long diatribe, and this is nothing that's in the album, except it is in the album. That's the reality. That is the pain that he is expressing, of always being seen this way, no matter what you are. So yes, he is seen as Will Smith from afar, the acceptable person amongst international racists. But when it comes down to it, behind closed doors, that is how he is also seen. I don't know. Was that too much of a story? Please put in the comments if that was too much. I don't know if I should go that far into this kind of random anecdotes and that don't really pertain to the artist, but emphasize what he's trying to say. The next track is called Whip Cracker, a very minimalist song, just a bass drum until eventually some guitar comes in, more punky anti-racist stuff. This feels at times it feels like an anti-racism punk album. And there's a lot of great anti-racist punk songs, but really it feels that way. Very poetical though, the way he's delivering it. It's never quite clear exactly what he means when he's saying it. But this song is nice because it sounds angry. And I think that's necessary. I think he refers to himself as Malcolm X at some point here. I hope your soul is safe. We're going to hold your fate. I think this is necessary. I think those racist French bastards in that hunting lodge in the Camargue need to feel a little bit afraid for those views and need to be pressured to change those views. Again, this is paired very nicely with the previous song, Black Dogs. It's amazing how these things are also well paired. The next 2 tracks are also paired, and they're very happy. A song about fishing. It's a rock song which gets almost Bowie-esque. There's a time where, I don't compare everything to Bowie, it's just a coincidence over the last week. But he says, I told my tale to a merchant man. And just the way he says, a merchant man, I ain't got the power anymore. It really sounds super Bowie-ish. The song itself reminds me even more of like A Perfect Day by Lou Reed. And it has this weird low-key feeling. And you're going through this whole album, and he's talking about the black dog, and he's talking about the misery, and the racism, and the institutional racism, and the personal racism, and the need to account, and all these sad things. And there's a song about fishing. This is what he says about it. It was a jokey freestyle in the studio, but it turned into this weird parable about perseverance in dire circumstances. Okay? It was a jokey freestyle that turned into this beautiful song. Every day like a retake. Fishermen inside of a sweepstakes. That it's hard to succeed in these fishless lakes to be a fisher person. A fishless lake. That's the image that he's describing of his existence. You know, he's certainly not just a rapper. I would put him in the category more, it really is a lot like Dram, where it's just like, he's just a performer, a great performer and artist who's able to express these things so well. Because it's not just like he's so capable of doing everything that he's trying to do. It never feels like, here he comes, he's going to sing basically a rock and roll song about fishing that's going to be a parable for perseverance in times of dire circumstances. And in this, he does something that great artists can do. A great artist can take something serious and make it funny. And they can take something funny and make it serious. That ability to play with different registers, to transform things, that really does take a certain quality, a certain ability, not just with words, but with ideas. And it's God damn it, this is an impressive album. Thank you, auditors, for telling me to review it. Do you know what? The other reason I didn't review it is that Fantano reviewed it, and I try not to just review everything he reviews, but he reviews a lot of good stuff. And I didn't watch his review. I'm sure it was good, but I didn't want it to spoil mine. So sometimes I get weird. I mean, you know, I'm not in competition with him, but at the same time, like, he is the big dog, so it's hard not to think about what he's doing. Anyways. Next track is called No Looking Back, which again goes right back to the same theme of perseverance. We seem to be heading towards a happy point here. Okay, speaking of 80s sitcoms, we've talked about The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I hate to inform you, but this song is basically a cover of the theme song to Family Ties. Everywhere you look, there's a face. Somebody who needs you. Once I tell it to you and you hear the song, you're going to go, oh my God, how did I not hear that? They even say everywhere you look here. But it's a good song. It's a very nicely written song, and it's about perseverance, and it's necessary. It's necessary to have the highs and the lows. Sorry, I dropped my black dog. It's necessary to have the highs and the lows everywhere that you go in this album. The album ends with the track Bye Bye, which has a super badass drum beat. I just love it with a little bit of reverb on it. It sort of reminds me even of like an Isaac Hayes kind of like extended out soul song. And here, the hope that we had before is crushed. How do I breathe with my hands on my own throat? Yikes. Crawling back to the black dog. Neck, 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 neck. The last words of the song, 2 times, black dog, black dog. The last stop of the album, black dog, black dog. The album ends with its beginning. It's not a happy ending. It's a circular ending. And I don't know if I like that. I don't know if I like that it ends on a down note. Maybe I kind of wish that he had the hope to get out of it. But maybe it's richer this way. Wait a minute. Of course I want it to end this way. This is how he wanted to end it. This is what he thinks is true. That's the whole thing. I don't want it to be an arc where at the end he's happy now and he can deal with racism and the demons inside of him and now he's okay and he'll make it out. If that's not true, I don't want to hear it. I want to hear the hope. But if there's still the despair, I need to hear that too. All right. I don't want smiling through no teeth. So there's my review. I really enjoyed this album. You were right to insist that I do it. I'm very interested in learning more about this artist and following this artist going forward. As I said, I do now have a Patreon. The idea is this. When you give me money, I just put it in an account that I only use to buy music. So you're not actually, well, you're giving me money because I get to keep the albums, but you're also like supporting artists. So you can check it out. I'll put a link down there if you want. But seriously, don't. Like, if you need money, you know, I'm okay. I got a house. I got a couple black dogs. Okay. Well, until next time, for Toby, there's the camera. Woof!